Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. In honor of International Overdose Awareness Day, a special rally was held in Lethbridge, remembering those who lost their lives. The president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedom speaks out following news that an Alberta woman who was refused an organ transplant passed away. And RCMP in Saskatchewan issued a warning to parents across Canada as kids get ready to go back to school.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Thursday marks International Overdose Awareness Day. A special rally was held in Galt Gardens in Lethbridge to pay tribute to those who lost their lives due to an overdose. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details on the elevated number of opioid deaths here in our city.
We cannot just sit back and say, it's your individual problem. This is a malaise of our society.
The Alberta government recently released numbers stating that a total of 10 people in Lethbridge died as a result of illicit drug use during the month of May. That brings the year-to-date total for the city up to a record of 67. Staff with the Lethbridge Friends of Medicare chapter told us it's vital to honor those who have passed away from a fatal overdose.
Fentanyl is highly addictive. It's more addictive than the opioids. And so I think we have to realize our humanity and realize our compassion to others who've been in those situations.
Members of the Alberta Alliance who educate and advocate responsibly were in Galt Gardens talking about harm reduction and showing people how to use naloxone kits.
It's just getting worse and worse, especially since the consumption site shut down. You know, there's not the proper supports. There's not enough people watching in case people go into a poisoning. We could save a lot of more people with safer supply or more supervised consumption sites or proper drug testing services as well.
In a recent interview with Bridge City News, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith mentioned that the province is investing in the construction of 11 recovery communities in Alberta.
So whether it takes a month or 6 months or a year, we'll be making sure that they are clean from their addiction and they have training so that they can take care of themselves, training so that they can get attached to a job. And we believe this is the only way to be able to support people, is to give everybody an opportunity to have a chance to recover.
Meanwhile, over at Streets Alive Mission, the Christian organization has recovery programs for men and women that are battling addiction.
If we can keep them past 30 days on the trail to 120 days, our success rate goes to 92%. So it's very successful. The programs that we run, they're intense. And that's getting people to 120 days. Now, beyond that, over the last 3 or 4 years, we now have individuals who are 3 and 4 years clean. We have people who are getting their children back.
According to Alberta researchers, the amount of opioids and other illicit drugs contained in our province's wastewater jumped in June. Addiction specialist Dr. Monty Gosh says the levels for opioids such as carfentanil were 4 times higher than the month before. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Many Albertans have been reacting to the news that Sheila Annette Lewis passed away. She was the Alberta woman who was denied an organ transplant because she refused to get the COVID-19 vaccine. According to the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, Lewis had been crowdsourcing funding to travel to the United States to get an organ transplant, but sadly, she didn't make it. Lewis also lost her fight to have the courts order the medical system to give her a transplant. Now, to chat about this in more detail is the president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, John Carpe, who joins us from Calgary. John, this is a tragedy on so many levels. Why couldn't the Court of King's Bench have helped Sheila Annette Lewis?
Biggest problem, of course, the court rulings were a problem because they did not delve into the evidence that was presented about the vaccine, and they decided that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms doesn't really apply to this. The biggest problem is the doctors who knew full well by December of 2021, everybody knew that the COVID vaccine did not prevent people from getting sick. It did not prevent the virus from spreading. It did not provide us with herd immunity, did not prevent people from dying with COVID. That was well known by December of 2021, if not a lot earlier. And it was in 2021 when the doctors started to pressure Sheila Annette Lewis into getting this vaccine. The culpability of the doctors became even worse in March of 2023 when Sheila Annette Lewis presented them with a blood test, which she had obtained at her own expense, showing that she had COVID antibodies. And so she had natural immunity. She had had COVID twice, once in 2021 and the second time more recently. So she survived COVID just fine twice without the vaccine. And by 2023, this whole pandemic was over. Even the World Health Organization had said there is no more pandemic. Even then, these Alberta Health Services doctors refused to put her on the organ transplant waiting list, and they sentenced her to death. And it's horribly tragic, horribly unnecessary.
So, John, what is the main takeaway from all of this? Is it that you must be vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus, or else you're not eligible for an organ transplant here in Alberta?
Well, Albertans need to pick up their phones and phone their MLA and say that it's inexcusable that the government would allow Alberta Health Services to engage in this kind of utterly unscientific and unethical discrimination that has no foundation in medicine. And it is possible for Premier Smith and the Health Minister to simply inform Alberta Health Services that they are never again to do to other people what they did to Sheila Annette Lewis. And so if citizens phone their MLAs, then the government, it's within the power of the government to change this policy. Because when doctors are disregarding medicine and science and ethics, it's necessary for the government to step in and rectify that problem.
Thanks so much for your time today, John. That was John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, joining us from Calgary. RCMP in Saskatchewan have issued a warning as our kids get ready to head to school. They're warning parents not to share too much of their child's personal information on social media. Police posted a good example recently on their Facebook page. They say it's fine to show that your child is going to school, but do not include their name, their age, what grade they're going into, or even the name of the school. Police say this is the best way to protect yourself and your family while still celebrating the fact that kids are headed back to school. Vancouver Police Deputy Chief Fiona Wilson announced the arrest of a suspect. Now, a person they've been looking for over a decade. It relates to a series of sexual assaults that took place more than 10 years ago in the city's downtown core.
This investigation began nearly 15 years ago on Canada Day of 2009. In the early morning hours, a 20-year-old woman was attacked by a stranger and sexually assaulted walking near Granville Island. The assault was violent and unprovoked, and though a witness intervened, the suspect got away. We immediately launched an investigation, collected evidence, and supported the victim. However, we did not identify the suspect. When this investigation started, we had just that one original case, but in the coming months, it grew to include others. Last month, investigators from our sex crimes unit traveled to Regina, Saskatchewan. With help from the Regina Police Service, they arrested a 45-year-old suspect in connection with the unsolved crimes. Arturo Garcia Gorjon was brought back to Vancouver and has since been charged with 4 counts of sexual offenses that occurred between July 1st, 2009 and December 24th, 2010.
British Columbia has extended its provincial state of emergency as the ongoing wildfires continue to pose a challenge and dangers in many areas of the province. Emergency officials say a 2-week extension to the emergency declaration is needed in case additional orders under the Emergency Act are needed. The BC Wildfire Service says there are now 422 active fires burning across the province, with 195 burning out of control. 12 of the blazes are listed as fires of note due to their high visibility or potential threat to the public. Albertans received a fiscal update from the province today. Treasury Board President and Finance Minister Nate Horner offered up details of Alberta's first quarter and how well our economy is doing. The fiscal update shows a surplus of $2.4 billion, with the provincial debt to be projected at $76.7 billion, which is down $2.6 billion from 2022. Minister Horner says the price of oil has been helping the province's bottom line, but so has a lot of the tax revenue that's been generated.
Our revenue forecast for 23-24 has increased to $71.1 billion, a $491 million jump that's being driven by significant increases in both personal and corporate income tax revenue. Our strong population growth and low-cost, low-tax, business-friendly environment are driving a projected $1.5 billion income tax revenue increase and spurring the job creation and innovation that's driving Alberta's nation-leading economic performance. Of our total revenue, corporate income tax for the year is now forecast at $6.8 billion, an $889 million increase from budget. It's worth pointing out that we're achieving that number with the lowest corporate income tax rate in the country by a wide margin.
Now, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is applauding the Alberta government's fiscal update. The Alberta director with the CTF, Chris Sims, joins us now from Lethbridge to talk a little bit more about it. Chris, you say it's great that the recent surplus is here and it's being put to good use?
So they now have a law in the province of Alberta where the surplus cash, 50% of it, half, has to go down onto the debt, and the rest of it either has to go into Heritage Savings Trust Fund or towards spending that doesn't increase overall spending. All of that is to say is they've got really good fiscal rules in place right now, and they're sticking to them, and we're really happy to see that.
Chris, during his fiscal update, Finance Minister Horner also talked about the volatility of oil. If West Texas Intermediate oil is up, we're in pretty good shape. But as we know, the price of oil does fluctuate a little bit. What does this mean for our economy moving forward?
That's a great question. A lot of people highlight the fact that we are on a so-called resource roller coaster here in the province of Alberta, which is again why it is so essential for them to have these spending limits on themselves. So, for example, in years past, when we've had a really big surplus, the government was successfully pressured by special interest groups to blow their surplus. They went on huge spending benders. And then we all suffered for it when suddenly the resource revenue dried up a bit. Whereas if they have these spending restrictions, such as they have to keep spending increases to the rate of population growth and inflation, we won't get into the same problem again.
Thanks so much, Chris. That was Chris Sims, Alberta Director of the CTF, joining us from Lethbridge. Now, the interest on the debt could continue to be an issue for Alberta, however, with the province estimated to spend around $3 billion on interest charges this fiscal year, despite a lessening debt load. A statue of Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, was torn down in Montreal 3 years ago by protesters, and it will not be placed and replaced back in the downtown core. Instead, city officials say they plan to display the statue in a new location with new contextual information.
We are officially taking a decision on the future of the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald. I would like to reiterate that we are aware of the sensitivity of this subject. It's a subject that has been giving rise to discomfort, reflection, and essential debate within our communities and societies, and also within all of us. We have questioned our position thanks to the rigorous and in-depth work of an independent committee, not with the aim of erasing history, but with the aim of confronting it with the values and the concerns of our time. It was important for us to get through all the process and to hear the people and to have experts, not only emotions, to make an important decision for history.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says his government has a plan to address the housing crisis in his province. He says as more people move into Canada's most populated province, his government is working with municipalities to get more homes built.
And as our population grows, as our economy grows, we need to make sure our infrastructure keeps up. So we're working closely with our cities and the municipalities to build at least minimum 1.5 million homes by 2031, so young people and newcomers can realize the dream of home ownership sooner than later. And across Ontario, we've embarked on the most ambitious capital plan in the province's history. We're investing nearly $50 billion to support more than 50 new hospital projects, $22 billion to build more schools and childcare spaces, $28 billion in roads and highways, and more than $70 billion in transit as we build the largest transit expansion in North America.
Members of a Canadian humanitarian delegation shared concerns of what they saw during a recent trip to Syria. The group went on a 5-day mission to detention camps in the northeastern part of the country, prisons where Canadians are being held. Some of the Canadians, however, allegedly went to Syria to fight for ISIS.
Nothing in my working life prepared me for the experience I would have over the last week. Canada prides itself on being a human rights leader and has prided itself on being an international human rights leader. What we saw is Canada not being at the forefront of both fulfilling its obligations or participating with the international community to ensure that human rights are upheld in the northeast, the region of northeast Syria, where the Canadians we met with are detained. But the good news is it's not too late, and change can happen as early as this afternoon, as we will speak about. Canada thus far has had no consular visits with any of the prisoners. Some consular visits via video, we understand, with some of the women. And that must change immediately. There are significant health concerns of individuals who are there. The people of northeast Syria, the autonomous administration of north and east of Syria, were very informative, very open, very welcoming to our delegation, but we were not an official Canadian delegation. We were a human rights, civil society, humanitarian delegation.
Plants are a vital part of our ecosystem. Now that's according to the Associate Professor of Botany at the University of Lethbridge, Jenny McCune. She's created a short film called The Quiet Green Creatures, where she's documenting her study of the wood poppy. She also explains why some plant species here in Canada are at risk of extinction.
In Canada, we have some close to 4,000 different species of vascular plants. And the major reason that some of them are at risk of extinction is because they grow mostly in the southern part of our country, which is also where we like to live and work. And so we've been clearing a lot of their habitat for centuries to make way for our housing, our agriculture, our industry, and things like that.
Professor McCune shares more with BCN's Jeanette Rocher about bringing awareness of endangered plant species here in Canada. Watch for that interview coming up after Business News. A large tech show is underway in Berlin, Germany. Now, one of the more popular items this year, a new weed-killing robot that's being displayed. Willow is a lawn robot which can mow your lawn, remove weeds, and even be a special guard at night.
One of the downsides of using bioherbicides is that you need to do it regularly. You need to spray on it regularly. So with the robot, that's the benefit. The robot can do that for you. So what the robot does, it actually makes a map of where the weeds are located, and then it goes out, sprays on it, but also it monitors the weeds to see, like in a few days, does the weed really disappear or not? If it doesn't disappear, you can just put the setting that it will go over it again until it really gets rid of it. So the first time that you install the robot, you have to make a map with the robot. So the robot actually follows you. You walk around in your garden, you can go from one zone to the other. The robot records where you have walked, and then it makes a 3D map of your environment.
Willow, the weed killer robot. What a great invention. You know, as for our lawns, they've been loving some of the moisture we've been receiving here lately in Lethbridge, but the rain clouds should be leaving us just in time for the weekend. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. Well, we had some light showers in parts of southwestern Alberta again today. Tonight, the rain cloud should clear, leaving us with a little bit of smoky haze from the wildfires and a low near 7 degrees here in Lethbridge. Friday, mainly sunny with a high expected near 24. Lots of sunshine again on Saturday with a high near 30. Just a few clouds are on tap for Sunday with a high reaching 27. Labor Day holiday Monday, there's a chance of showers developing with a mercury dropping to 21. Expect a mix of sun and cloud and a high of 24 on Tuesday. Mainly cloudy and 22 degrees for Wednesday. The average high for this time of year is 23 degrees with an average low of 8. The highest temperature recorded on this date was 37 degrees back in 1991, and the lowest temperature was 0 in 1994. The sun rose at 6:45 and set at 8:17. Let's see how Friday's shaping up across our home and native land. Expect loads of sunshine and a high of 23 in Vancouver, sunshine and a high of 24 degrees for Victoria. Calgary had a special air quality statement today from the wildfire smoke. Friday, just a few clouds are on tap with a high of 25. Edmonton, smoky conditions as well with a high near 24. It should be mainly sunny and 29 degrees in both Regina and Saskatoon. There's a good chance of light rain developing and a high near 28 for Winnipeg on Friday. In the central part of the country, expect loads of sunshine and 24 degrees for Toronto, sunny and a high of 25 for both Ottawa and Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, there should be a blue sky and 22 degrees for Fredericton, sunshine and 20 for Halifax, mainly sunny and 19 degrees for Charlottetown, and in St. John's, expect loads of rain and a high near 15 degrees on Friday. A new report from CIBC says the actual number of non-permanent residents in Canada may be higher than the number often cited by policymakers. The report says the number could be off by as much as 1 million. CIBC says that would mean any policies around housing or those aimed at capping the number of non-permanent residents might be more urgent than previously thought. Canada's population hit an official milestone of 40 million people earlier this year. Around 320,000 Kia vehicles are being recalled across North America due to a trunk latch issue. In documents posted by U.S. safety regulators, Kia says the trunk latch base can crack and may not open from the inside. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says this could result in a person inside of the trunk becoming trapped. The recall covers the 2016 to 2018 midsize Optima, 2017 to 2018 Optima hybrids, and plug-ins, along with the 2016 to 2017 Rio. An airline in Turkey will soon begin testing an adults-only section on its flights. Corendon Airlines says beginning in November, it will sell an adults-only zone on flights between Amsterdam and Curaçao. The carrier says those traveling without children will get quiet surroundings, while parents won't have to worry that their crying or fidgeting child may be disrupting fellow passengers. The adults-only sections will be open to anyone over the age of 16. No word yet if any North American airlines will follow suit. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 37 points on the day to finish at 20,292. The Dow was down 168 points to 34,890. The S&P 500 was down 7 on the day to 4507. And the NASDAQ was up 15 points to 14,034. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.95 to $83.58 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 3 cents to $2.76 U.S. Gold was down $2.48 on the day to finish at $19.39.85 U.S. an ounce, and silver was down 19 cents to $24.42 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.93 per bushel, barley's at $7.62, canola's at $18.42, and corn is at $9.27 per bushel. Live cattle were down $2.20 to $178.80. Feeder cattle were down 95 cents to $249.10, and lean hogs October contract was down $1.05 to $82.55. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.02 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, Albertans received a fiscal update from the province today. Treasury Board President and Finance Minister Nate Horner offered up details of Alberta's first quarter and how well our economy is doing. The fiscal update shows a surplus of $2.4 billion, with the provincial debt to be projected at $76.7 billion, which is down $2.6 billion from 2022. Minister Horner says the price of oil has been helping the province's bottom line, but so has a lot of tax revenue that's being generated. There are a number of plant species which are near extinction here in Canada. Assistant Professor of Botany at the University of Lethbridge will share details with us in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher in just a moment. If you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's local stories, be sure to visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
An assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a filmmaker have teamed up to release a film highlighting their work in preserving endangered plant species across Alberta. To give us a better understanding of the journey behind this film, we welcome its creator, Professor Jenny McCune. Welcome to the show today, Jenny. Great to have you on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so your movie is called The Quiet Green Creatures. I love that title. It reminds me of a little swamp monster or something, but that's not at all what we're talking about. So maybe tell us, what is the little film about? It's about 4.5 minutes long?
Yeah, it's a little video film that we put together about the research that my students are doing with endangered plants. And so the quiet green creatures is kind of a play on the idea that people often don't think about plants as creatures, but they are. They're a big component of Canada's wildlife. And so I wanted to kind of do something that would be accessible, that people could learn about what we're working on.
No, that's so interesting. What inspired you to create it?
Well, even way back when I was a graduate student, I sort of heard a lot about the importance of communicating your research beyond the academic community and communicating it to the general public. And I went to a little workshop about making these little videos, and I thought, ooh, one day I want to do that.
What a great idea. I love that. And we are in the age of communication and definitely social media and filmmaking. So what better way than to kind of showcase your work there? So how did you originally get interested in plants and botany?
Ooh, that's a great question. I grew up on a farm in Southern Ontario, and so I did a lot of gardening and went on canoe trips in the summer and things like that. But I had a really, really good biology teacher in high school that did a great job with the plant part of it. And I sort of just became fascinated with the plants, and they're different than us, right? They're sort of like aliens in a way. They don't move around like we do, and they don't communicate like we do, but they're living creatures. And so I guess, yeah, it was way back in high school when I started kind of being interested in plants.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much research, it seems, coming out right now about plants and how they, I don't know, like how they interact and stuff. It's really interesting. It's kind of fascinating. But getting back to the film, so in the film, you're basically saying that there are currently plant species in Alberta and around the world that aren't flourishing, right? So what's limiting them from thriving?
Yeah, so in Canada, we have some close to 4,000 different species of vascular plants. And the major reason that some of them are at risk of extinction is because they grow mostly in the southern part of our country, which is also where we like to live and work. And so we've been clearing a lot of their habitat for centuries to make way for our housing, our agriculture, our industry, and things like that. And so in our case, we're working a lot, we're focused on these plant species in Southern Ontario, which used to be about 80% at least covered with forest, and now, depending on what county you're in, is somewhere between 5 and 40%.
Yeah.
And so they're limited to these little chunks of forest kind of surrounded by, ag fields, cornfields, pastures, subdivisions, and cities. And so that can really take a toll on their ability to thrive, to move around the landscape. And of course, it also comes with other threats like exotic invasive species, changes in the herbivory, like are there more deer around chomping on them, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like we're almost all competing for the same space right there.
Exactly, that's the thing. And if we can't leave, I mean, it's not just plants, it's endangered animals too.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest cause of them being endangered is us taking up more and more of their habitat. So if we can't set aside some for them, we might lose them.
Yeah. So what are the main factors putting these plants at risk? Is it humans basically?
Yeah, I would say it's almost all human caused or things that are linked up with things that humans are doing on the landscape. In some cases, we don't really know why some of them are so rare. So that's one of the things we're trying to test. So with the wood poppy that we're working with, there are only 5 populations in all of Canada. They're all in Southern Ontario, but they seem to be able to grow quite well, even in, people have planted them in their garden and they do quite well. So our hypothesis we're trying to test is maybe there is other habitat in the area that's suitable. It's just that they can't get their seeds there because their seeds are dispersed by ants. And so if you think about how far an ant could go, it's probably not going to cross a 100-acre cornfield, to get to a new place.
Exactly. Is there a specific type of plant life that you're currently trying to save, and why?
Well, Southern Ontario, Ontario in total has about 77-ish species of plants that are listed under our Federal Species at Risk Act. So there are plenty to choose from. We're focused on 2 for these for these trials where we're planting them. One is called the wood poppy and one is called the crooked stem aster. And so we've chosen those for various reasons, one of them being they produce tons of seeds, and so we can get seeds from those existing populations without causing any danger to the population. We wouldn't want to collect seeds from a tiny population that only produces a few every year.
Okay, well, you're an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge. Are there any plant species around these parts, around southern Alberta, that you're specifically monitoring?
Yeah, we haven't studied any of Alberta's endangered plants. Here in Alberta, most of the plants that are listed on Canada's Species at Risk Act here are grassland plants, of course, because we're in the, down here in the south especially, it's the native vegetation is the grasslands, and those are the things that were cleared to make way for agricultural crops and things like that. So those include things like western spiderwort and the hair-footed loco weed and all these cool little grassland species. We haven't worked on any of those yet. We've done a bit of work in Waterton Lakes looking at the response of plants after the big fire that happened there in 2017. But we haven't focused on any endangered plants here yet.
Okay, and are there plants that are kind of at risk around here?
There's definitely some rare ones, and whether or not they're at risk, some of them definitively are. So I think there's 12 in total that are rare enough and at risk enough to be listed under that federal Species at Risk Act. Those ones are definitely, on the edge just because their native grassland habitat has been so reduced over time. But then there's others that are just rare and maybe doing fine in a few places, like in the mountains. And, we don't know about very many populations, but hopefully, because they're growing high up in the alpine somewhere, they won't lose habitat, at least not to human development.
Right.
They might face a problem due to climate change if it gets too hot for them.
How do you monitor the growth of these plants, even the ones in Ontario that you're kind of looking at?
Yeah, so the ones that we're monitoring, so we're monitoring the existing populations and we're also monitoring the ones that we plant. So what we do is we mark individual plants, we give them a little name tag basically, and we track them every year. So we measure how tall they grow, how many leaves they produce, how many flowers they produce, and how many fruits they produce. So that gives us an idea of how well they're doing. Are they reproducing? Are they growing really tall? And how does that change from year to year?
Okay, no, that's interesting. Almost like a little report card there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's neat. During the process of filming, did your team encounter any challenges?
Field work is always challenging. You're out there with the mosquitoes and the humidity and the rain. I worry. So here, when I have students out here in the mountains, I worry about bears. In Ontario, I don't worry about bears. I worry about ticks. So ticks carrying Lyme disease are an issue. But while we were filming, we just had fun. I just had this little GoPro camera that I bought, and I just sort of filmed us as we were walking and planting and measuring things. And I wish that we had been there at the time of year when the wood poppy is in bloom, because it really is a spectacularly beautiful flower when it's in bloom.
Okay.
And in the film, it isn't in bloom, but it has fruits on it, so you can see the fruits, but not the
I
flowers.
saw the little green fruits. They weren't quite ripe yet. What time of year were you filming?
Oh gosh, when was I there? It must have been late June.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely looked summery, very, very green. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
almost looked a little rainy as well. Yeah, so basically big challenges are like the environmental elements, pretty much.
Yeah,
The climate,
if you're going to be a plant ecologist, you have to be ready to spend all day out in the forest with the
100%.
mosquitoes.
There you
Yeah.
go. Now, the short film communicates the importance of biodiversity. So what do you hope viewers will take away from it?
Well, I always try and raise the profile of plants a little bit. I think a lot of people, when they think of endangered species, they think of caribou or maybe even tigers and pandas and elephants and things like that. But I think it's important to get the word out that, endangered species include these quiet green creatures, these plants. And, people love plants. It's not that we don't love plants, that people fill their houses with house plants and they get into their gardening. And so, just hoping to kind of raise awareness that we also have some plant creatures that we're worried about here and that we're trying to conserve.
Okay, interesting. So what can the average person do about all of this? Like, for instance, are there any specific actions or changes that you hope your audience will be motivated to take after watching the film?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, the things that an ordinary person can do, like one thing that I do is I support local land trusts, because they're often the groups that are helping to preserve nice pieces of habitat and so that those habitat pieces won't get developed.
Yeah.
So here in Alberta, for example, we have the Southern Alberta Land Trust Association, I think it's called SALTS. You can donate to a place like that. Also just, supporting designation of parks and protected areas and things like that, and voting for people who support that.
Okay.
But also just getting out and noticing the plants, now with apps like iNaturalist, where you can snap a picture, you can put it on the internet, and you can learn what species it is really quickly, is a great way to learn. Yeah, a great way to learn more about the plants that you have, right in your backyard or in your local park.
Yeah, for sure. Do you believe that this film could even spark an interest in the younger generation to gain a better understanding of your field?
Yeah, I hope so. I was saying it's another sort of aspect of it is, having it up on my website as kind of a tool for potential grad students to see, right? Or even undergraduates that might want to work with us. Every summer, we hire undergraduates to come out and be our field assistants. And so it's a way for them to see, what is it really like doing that job? Like, what is it like being out there in the forests for 3 months of the summer?
Yeah, for sure. Now, collaborative efforts are often very crucial in conservation projects, but are you able to maybe elaborate on some of the partnerships and collaborations in your film?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the project itself is not just me. It's a group of collaborators, including the Wilder Institute, which is based at the Calgary Zoo. They are experts in reintroducing and translocating animals, but they wanted to, support us to learn more about using this tool for plants. And then the Nature Conservancy of Canada is a really important partner because they are the ones that have the land that we're working on. So they have these intact forests that we know are going to be preserved well into the future. And then we worked with a First Nations run native plant nursery called Guyana Say, and on the Six Nations Reserve in Southern Ontario. And so they were really important because obviously we were not going to grow 5,000 plants in Alberta and drive them to Ontario. We needed a place to grow them there.
That would have been a movie in itself there, about how you even did that. And then, and then speaking of filming, you mentioned you just had a little GoPro. Did you have another filmmaker with you or somebody that you kind of collaborated with to help you edit or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I came back with just this footage that I just gathered, and I was like, okay, here I am at this university that has, a whole new media program. There must be someone that can help me. So I was put in contact with Rodrigo Henriquez, who is the director, and just sort of said, here's all this footage. Here's a script of a voiceover that I wrote.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Do something with it. Help me.
Yeah. And so
Amazing.
he's got his own little company that does that kind of thing. And he was able to edit, splice all the things together, find this great music to put in the background. And I got to be in a studio, with headphones on, doing the voiceover.
Yeah,
so
it was
really
great. Do you plan on doing any more films with Rodrigo in the future?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. And we've got more work coming up, both in Ontario and here in Southern Alberta. So It was a great experience. And I think, it's just a nice way to communicate what you're doing in a short, digestible piece.
Definitely. Yeah. It's not like a long documentary. It's just really short and to the point. And no, it was great.
Yeah.
Johnny, thanks so much for your time today. It looks like we're out of time here.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
No, it was great to kind of understand a little bit more about the work that you do. So thank you for that. Jenny McCune is an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a botanist who has worked to protect endangered plant species across Alberta and Ontario, and I guess beyond. So great to have her on today. Well, there's an organization in Lethbridge which provides invaluable support for women who may be facing various challenges during a crucial stage of their lives, from those seeking health choices during pregnancy to women feeling alone or isolated, or those living on a low income or even facing language or cultural barriers. Better Beginnings is there to lend a helping hand. Tammy Gamrasi joins me to talk more about the work of Better Beginnings. Tammy, welcome to Bridge City News. Now, you are a registered nurse and you're actually the coordinator of Better Beginnings, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and it sounds like Better Beginnings does a whole heck of a lot. You offer so many services. And is this all free of charge to the client? It's through Alberta Health Services, right?
It is, yeah. So Better Beginnings is a fairly long-established program, been around for over 25 years now, and it is a free supportive health service.
Okay, awesome. You know, do you go through referrals? How do women actually hear about you initially?
It's a great question. Sort of a few different ways. So absolutely anyone can just call us directly to see if they do qualify. If you did call the program, what that would look like is a nurse would just answer the phone. She'd probably ask you a few questions about sort of like just what your circumstances are, ask you about your pregnancy, and then just make sure that you qualify and you're eligible for the program. And then from there, she would book you for an actual intake appointment. And at that intake appointment, that's where we would explain the program a little more in depth, get some more information from yourself, just so that we know moving forward how to put some more supports in place for you. We also get several referrals from other agencies, from other doctors' offices and nurses, of course, with clients' consent. Sometimes we get those calls. And so what that would look like is we would just call you back and again, go through that whole process and just ask you if you wanted to be part of the program. So again, it's completely voluntary as well. It's a free program, but it's also a voluntary program.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And are you only located in southwestern Alberta, or are there locations everywhere?
So Better Beginnings through AHS here is, so we're in the southwest area, which includes, of course, Lethbridge, Cardston, Coaldale, Crosens Pass, Fort McLeod, McGrath, Milk River, Picture Butte, Pincher Creek, Raymond, Tabor, and Vauxhall. So anywhere there's a public health office, there'll be a Better Beginnings nurse available there to reach out to. But there are other programs funded the same way throughout the province.
Right. Okay. No, well, that's good to know. And I know that you're definitely online, so people can go online and check it out. Now, how does it work? Do the women have to come to you, to your office? Can you meet, I guess, virtually, online? I know these days everything's online, but...
That's a good question. So we actually, once you do qualify for the program, everything is in person. So we have the women come to, so if it's Lethbridge, it would be the train station here. Or again, if it was a rural site, it would be that public health office there. So the whole point of the program is, that we support you in your pregnancy. And a lot of that is that face-to-face care, right? So yeah, it's definitely face-to-face.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's get into the specifics here of what your support actually is. So what sort of help can you offer pregnant or parenting women, I guess new moms?
That's a great question. So we, of course, offer lots of information on pregnancy and parenting, specifically, or very importantly, absolutely non-judgmental support. So the women that we serve come from all walks of life. And so very, very importantly, we offer non-judgmental support from nurses, dietitians, community advocates. When they come to see us on a monthly basis, we also provide incentives. So Walmart gift cards and farmers market coupons, just to help with healthy food choices. We also offer prenatal vitamins for mom and vitamin D for baby. And also lots of information and referrals to other agencies. We're very connected to a lot of other agencies in the area. So lots of referrals as well. And also free pre and postnatal access.
Wow, oh, that's fabulous. So what would you say is the most felt need by expectant moms when they come to Better Beginnings?
Ooh, that's there's a lot.
I'm sure there's a gamut. Right?
There is really so who qualifies for the program is anyone who, so of course we see if you're a teenager, you qualify immediately for our program, no questions asked. So we also deal with women who, just are struggling social, emotionally, or physically, right? So living in low income, women who've already maybe had a premature baby, maybe they're at risk for poor nutrition. So they're having a hard time either financially or physically getting enough food to eat. Substance abuse. So if you're struggling with substance abuse, maybe a history of mental health disorders, new to Canada, even just like limited social supports, just like, you're new to town or maybe you are the first person in your whole family and your friends to have a baby and you don't really have a lot of support in your life, or even just wanting to cope with the stress of pregnancy. So we see a wide range of needs that come to us.
Yeah, wow.
So, yeah, hard to pin that question down with one need, but there's a lot.
Oh, I can imagine. Okay, so what specific services do you offer women facing challenges related to a low income? Do you have to be low income to qualify?
So lots of referrals, lots of help with setting up with other support services that will kind of help follow them or help set them up with financial support. The financial support that we offer specifically here isn't large, right? It's not the Walmart gift cards and the farmers market coupons are certainly not enough to support themselves, but it's enough to just help out with maybe formula or baby supplies or whatever is going on for that mom. So it's a lot more referral-based services financially specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if a young lady comes to you seeking help like this, so what's the recommended starting point for her?
She can just call us. So wherever she is in the zone, just call the public health office and just say, I'd like to sign up for Better Beginnings. And from there, if she gets a voicemail or just someone will call her back and set up an intake appointment, again, to see if she qualifies and set up an intake appointment with her.
Okay, no, simple enough there. Okay, so how does Better Beginnings maybe address those language and cultural barriers to ensure that women from diverse backgrounds receive adequate support?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So of course, because we are HS and we provide service to, everybody in the province, we have access to language lines. So we have access to a multitude of translators through that. So we actually do see a lot of new Canadians in our program. And the way that looks is we actually contact language line with the language that we are needed. And we'll actually have an iPhone and we'll just have them on speakerphone. And so we can have that conversation happen right between us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I would imagine that you offer all kinds of assistance in making healthy choices during a pregnancy. And I believe that there's a dietitian involved, right? So maybe explain the dietitian's role in this Better Beginnings relationship with this young lady and how they provide nutrition advice to pregnant women.
So we are connected with Alberta Healthy Living Program, which is another program through Alberta Health Services. And so we have dietitians that we work with and we refer clients. Most of our clients, actually, we refer to the dietitians. And at that appointment, the dietitians can help that mom one-on-one, whatever her situation looks like. So it's not necessarily, sort of a set program that they'll go through with the moms. It's really client-led. And so whatever that mom is sort of struggling with or whatever she really wants to whatever information she needs regarding nutrition, whether it's for her own health or introducing solid food to baby or anything like that. So we'll refer them for a one-on-one dietitian appointment.
Well, and changing your diet or lifestyle for the benefit of a baby coming into the world, it definitely requires a whole new way of thinking, especially if you're a brand new mom and have never experienced it before. So is there maybe some guidance or advice available to change the mother's focus to thinking about options and choices for not just herself, but for a new baby, I guess, coming into the world?
Yeah, well, and actually, I should say for talking to a registered dietitian, it doesn't just have to be a Better Beginnings client. Anyone who just wants to know more about healthy eating, pregnant or not pregnant, can access that, a dietitian at Alberta Healthy Living. But the new Canada Food Guide, if you've seen that updated food guide, it's really great. There's a lot more emphasis on a variety of healthy food or healthy vegetables and fruits, rather than just sort of set limiting food. So there's lots of different options that women can look at there.
Would this maybe also include changing the way of thinking and acting around the home as well? Do they offer guidance for that?
Yeah, all kinds of guidance, depending on what that looks like, right? And the reality of the situation, because for a lot of people, and it might just be, how do I access healthy food on a low budget? Because not everybody has the privilege of accessing healthy food, just buying a whole bunch of extra healthy food. So dietitians are very mindful of that as well, and just helping people access and change their diets, again, depending on their specific situation.
Yeah. How does Better Beginnings maybe help women who want to quit smoking during pregnancy? I would imagine that's really a tough one.
That's a really, really tough one. Often they'll make sure that they talk to their doctor about that conversation is a really strong one with their physician. There's also a program called Alberta Quits that will help refer women to that. Again, depending on where that woman is at and what level of readiness she is for quitting, they'll help her with that if that's where she's wanting to.
No, excellent. Are you able to share some success stories or examples of maybe how Better Beginnings has positively impacted the lives of pregnant women or new moms?
There is one I can think of. We did have a mom who came in, and this one always sort of sticks in my head. And when we first met her, she came to us transient, so she didn't have a home to live. From out of town, she came to Lethbridge, was dealing with addiction issues, mental health issues, and obviously housing issues, income issues. Also had a warrant out for her arrest, so was sort of dealing with that. And she was, I believe, about 14 weeks pregnant on top of all that. So you can see how when we see clients, the pregnancy is a big part of it. There's also a lot of other things going on with that. So with that mom, a lot of our focus was really getting her supported with some one-on-one support, some home visitation support. Making sure that advocate who was working with her helped advocate for her so that instead of going to jail, she went to treatment, because that's definitely a better place for someone who is having a baby. And just really worked with her addiction issues, of course, set up a dietitian appointment with her. And at that point, I remember her saying, we were talking about her diet and sort of where she was at that point. And she said, well, so far today, I had a banana and a Coke, and of course, non-judgmentally, that's where she's at. And she said, to be fair, when I was in the depths of addiction, that's what I would eat in a week.
Right.
So that's great. That's our starting point. And so she obviously saw a dietitian. We had her set up with a postpartum mental health therapist, who we also work with. And so just really put a lot of supports in her life. We're not here to really solve all of her problems one-on-one, but really as a community and the community supports we have, put all those supports in place for her. She also got free prenatal classes with us. So her and her partner were able to come to prenatal classes. And the nice thing about that is a lot of our staff actually, the staff in Better Beginnings also teach those classes. And so that's a familiar face, right? and less intimidating to do a group when you know the nurse, you've talked to her for a little bit. So she did prenatal. She delivered a healthy, drug-free baby boy, exclusively breastfeeding. She ended up doing postnatal classes as well with us, and just began to sort of build a new community around her of other moms in those postnatal classes, and was still being supported really well through addiction and mental health. And so that mom, I saw her when her baby was 6 months old, and she was talking about, going back to school. And so that's not everybody. We don't, depending on where people are at. But that's a really good example of someone coming to us with a multitude of other things going on in her life. And the pregnancy is important, but getting a lot of those other factors in her life sorted out first is just as important.
Oh, absolutely. What a fabulous success story that is. That's just wonderful. And what a wonderful program that you're coordinating there. And it looks like we are unfortunately out of time here. But Tammy, thanks so much for spending some time with us today to explain what this wonderful program is all about.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. That was Tammy Gammercy of Better Beginnings, a non-judgmental supportive health services for pregnant or parenting women through Alberta Health Services. And she, of course, is the coordinator of that program and a registered nurse. So happy to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.